Happy Saturday, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am very happy to see you all yet again in our monthly virtual event, that too on a weekend. Thanks for joining. As always, this boosts my morale and motivates me to keep coming every month with a new topic. Let's talk about the agenda. We will talk about introduction, and today we are not going to talk about latest Apple updates and latest Jamf updates. This month, we will be focused on our special event, Installomator, and update on the update tool with none other than Armin Briegel. My name is Salim Okani, and people know me also by name Samstar777. I have overall 15 plus years of experience in both Mac and Windows platform. I am Jamf 200, 300, 370, and 400 certified. I love to help people. And hence, I created this community called India's Apple Admin. And I am proud to say that we are the first Jamf Nation community from India who started monthly events. The small QR code which you see on top left corner, if you scan that code, you will be connected to me on my LinkedIn profile. This slide is specifically for those people who are joining my event for the first time or who are checking this video on my YouTube channel. I give you a couple of seconds. Please scan this QR code and join my Telegram group, India Apple Admins. Note, you will need a Telegram app installed on your mobile for the scanner to work. I'll give you 5 seconds. Let's talk about our special event, Installomator, and update on the update tool. First of all, I would like to give a warm welcome to our esteemed guest speaker, Armin Briegel. Armin is senior consultant engineer in Jamf. Armin, just to tell you, in this group, many of us admire you as a Mac admin. Today, Armin will help us understand how Installomator can help us in our Mac packaging journey and what are the new update on this update tool. Enough of me talking. Let me hand it over to our guest speaker, Armin. Over to you, Armin.
My name is Armin Briegel. You might know me from the website Scripting OS 10 and its new spin-off, macadmins.news. I have spun off the regular weekly newsletter into its own website, and that's been working out quite well. So if you're suddenly missing your weekly newsletter, you might have missed the move to macadmins.news. Check that out. I work as a senior consulting engineer at Jamf, though I am aligned with the European headquarters here in Amsterdam. We are the EMEA group, and the I in there stands for India. So every once in a while, I have the wonderful honor of working with our Indian colleagues and helping them out. And I hope that maybe one day I might be able to come to India. So today, however, I'm not going to talk about a Jamf project, or at least mostly not. I'm here to talk about Installomator. Um, I will first introduce what it does, and towards the end, I will have some slides on some pro tip slides, as in case you already know it, and how to work best with the project and the open source community in this case. Installomator was a project that we started at my previous job, where I worked for a local MSP called Pro Warehouse at the beginning of the pandemic. We got the task of we had to clean up our own Jamf Pro installation, and Installomator was one of the results. We made it open source, and it's certainly taking on a life of its own since then. The goal that we're trying to address is the standard challenge of managed software installation. As an admin on the Mac or pretty much any other platform, when you manage software, there's this cycle of things you have to do. First, you download the app in question. Depending on your management system, you often have to repackage it, upload it to your management server, which then starts doing its job of distributing the software to all of the clients. Of course, we have many pieces of software, and these many pieces of software get updated many, many times. So this is an endless cycle. We're doing this a lot. There is a tool that focuses on the download and repackaging and upload part, which is called AutoPackage, which I will mention a few times today. AutoPackage is awesome and wonderful and has a very important place in the MacAdmins community, and I use it still a lot, even though I also have Installomator. Those two can exist in parallel very well, and you should really check out AutoPackage. But there is a use case where we don't really care about the entire work and the packaging and everything. We just want the latest version installed. And we would like that without too much effort. And somebody once said, oh, what you're doing is YOLO installation. You only live once installation. You don't really care, just YOLO it out. And I think, yeah, that's exactly what we want. Just install what the latest version is, especially with cloud-based software that talks with a cloud service. We have to have the latest version, otherwise it might not work very well. So one solution to that, and there are many, but one solution to that is to have a shell script or some other program on the server. And the script is sent to the clients, and the script knows how to download the software directly from the vendor, the steps it needs to do to install the software, and then the script, of course, goes away again with its job done. And we can do that on all of the clients. This is all between the management server and the clients and the vendor server where it downloads the software. And we as admins have much less work and can go have a beverage or do something else useful. I did not invent the concept of installation scripts. These go back forever. I know that much earlier than this article from 2014, there were scripts to install Flash Player or Firefox or Java. Those go back a long, long time. Um, yeah, but Rich Troughton here was one of the oldest blog posts I could find about this. Bit more recently, Bill Smith, also from Jamf, wrote a script that downloads and installs Microsoft products. And he realized that all the download URL for Microsoft packages are the same, except for some product ID. And so you can use the same script for multiple different Microsoft installations. And he built such a script. And that kind of made me think, well, this is awesome. We can do this for all Microsoft products. But can we generalize the script even more and have one script that can install maybe not anything, but a lot of different pieces of software with all of the code centralized in one script, and then we can take care and improve the code for all of the applications at once? That would be kind of neat. And that's how Installomator started. Eric Stam and Sander Schramm here locally, when we worked together at Pro Warehouse, helped a lot in creating it. And then we open sourced it. And as I said, it's taken on a life of its own since then. Before we go into how it works in detail, there are some warnings, some counterindicators. These are situations where you really probably don't want to use Installomator. The first one is network constraints. Most obviously, say you have a school or a building with lots of people physically present, and all of them want to install Microsoft Office 2 GB download at the same time. Yeah, no matter what your network uplink is, that will be slammed. You need a different installation process with some local server to sort that out. Network constraints can also mean network security. Basically, Installomator is just a really elaborate script around a curl download, and many network security tools do not like curl for good reasons, usually. But then also, Installomator might be very limited by network constraints that are artificial in this case. VPN software. Don't want all the downloads going over the VPN software either. Some applications have a gated download, most obviously Xcode. I can log into developer.apple.com and get an Xcode archive to install, but I need to log in. So Installomator can't bypass these downloads. We need a public download link. Many organizations require version control or an approval and test process. That also means that you have to hold on to an older version or possibly older version of the software before you can deploy the latest version. And that is something that Installomator can't do. Installomator will just grab the latest version, so it will bypass any approval and test process you may have. But this is where the aforementioned auto package comes in. With auto package, you're automating the download and repackaging part, then putting it in your management system, and you can use your management system solution to control the version and have an older version available and installed on the clients until the latest version is approved by your processes. This is where I briefly put on my Jamf hat and have to mention that since 11.2, a bit earlier this year, Jamf app installers, which up until then also followed the "we are going to install the latest version" philosophy, as most other app installer catalogs do. But since a bit earlier this year, I think it was in March, we have a version that allows you to pin down the version you get installed on the clients. So at any point in time, you can say the now current version, hold on to that until I tell you otherwise. And then Jamf App Installer would keep installing that pinned down version. And you can at a later time go in and say, now this is the version I'm going to release to all the clients. So Jamf App Installer has one feature that Installer doesn't have. And I'm looking forward to it replacing a lot of other Installomator features. So maybe I won't have to maintain Installomator. But I also think it will take quite some time before that happens. But still, this is one feature that App Installer now has. There are some things that Installomator is really good at, though. It works really great with user-initiated installs and updates. So a tool like Self-Service, where the user goes in and says, oh, I need this tool now. Let me install that. Especially if you want to provide some tools that not everybody in your fleet wants to use. And like you have a few handful of people that are going to use something. You don't want to go through all the circus of maintaining the packages to be the most recent in your management system. Installomator works perfectly there. A distributed mobile fleet, where a centralized infrastructure such as a distribution server doesn't really make sense because everybody's out on the internet anyway. And since the pandemic started, we have all been forced into mobile and distributed fleets, and those are here to stay now. If you want a low maintenance overhead, of course, you can't be bothered to do all the packages. But also you kind of have a light touch deployment where you don't manage too strictly. Installomator fits in really nice. The user is a bit more in control in these kinds of deployments. And then the initial installation and enrollment, because Installomator is a script, depending on your management system, we can usually control very well when a script gets launched versus when a Mac App Store installation or something like Jamf App installers, because they use MDM commands and they might come in at a somewhat later time than the actual enrollment because of how MDM works. And we're not quite in control on when the installation happens. If you want to control that, Installomator is a good alternative. Many people I know use the Installomator for the initial installation and enrollment, and then app installers later with Jamf Pro, just for example, as a good strategy that works. When we download things from the internet, from a random server on the internet, there's download security. We have to be very aware of what we're downloading and installing on hundreds, potentially thousands of devices in our fleets. And we're installing them as root with root privileges. So we really have to be very aware of this. If we're actually getting what we think we're getting, or if some malicious attacker somehow injected themselves into the download process to distribute malware. This has happened before with apps like Handbrake and Transmission. Their web servers were hijacked, and a malicious copy of their software was injected with some malware and spyware inside. And we need to catch these things. There are a few things that we could have done. Of course, we use HTTPS downloads where available, but that alone doesn't protect you because you can still inject a different HTTPS certificate. We could do certificate pinning, so we check which certificate the web server is using, but that is unreliable because A, these things change, and B, many of the vendors actually distribute through content distribution networks, which might have changing certificates. So that was a dead end very quickly. Checksums was another idea we had, but then we'd have to update the directory of checksums every time there's an update, which means we'd have work every time there's an update, which is exactly what we wanted to avoid with Installomator. But there is a tool that already does the checking for us, and that is built into macOS. It's called Gatekeeper. When a user downloads something using Safari or another web browser, that file gets flagged, and before they launch the installer or open the archive, Gatekeeper checks it for the signature and the notarization to see if it's valid, and it might reject it for various reasons. And we can leverage that in our script with Installomator as well. The command to interface with Gatekeeper is called spctl, and we can use that to pass a package or a zip or a DMG archive or an application through it, and it will actually give me a ton of interesting information. First of all, it will say, oh yeah, this passed my check. So Gatekeeper thinks my desktop app, which I'm just using as an example, desktop tool, is accepted. It tells me it was notarized. So it's not just signed, it's notarized. Installomator will only accept apps and tools that are notarized. And it also tells me who did the notarization in the signing process. This 10-digit ID is unique to every developer certificate that Apple hands out. And that identifies that it wasn't just signed and notarized, but it was signed and notarized by my developer account. So somebody who has my private developer certificate, and I really hope that's only me. So macOS already does the data integrity scan, and with notarization, they claim they scan it for malware when you upload to notarization. We don't have any more details over that process, so we have to take Apple at their word, but we gain all of that with Installomator. But using this 10-digit developer ID, we can go one step further. And the reason for this is Gatekeeper doesn't care which developer ID something was signed and notarized it. Gatekeeper only cares that it was signed and notarized. But because we have in Installomator a list of all the instructions of how to download and install a piece of software, we can add one piece more, and that is which team ID should this installer have? And then when I download something and the team IDs match, everything is awesome. We know this is safe to install. But if somebody were to hijack my website and inject a malicious piece of software, they probably wouldn't also have stolen the developer certificate. They would have used a stolen or otherwise randomly generated developer certificate. And that would be different from the one that we would expect because we have a limited number of applications. We know which ones to expect. And then we get an additional step of verification and can be sure that the origin of this piece of software is actually really good. This sometimes triggers. Usually it's false positives because developers switch their certificates for various reasons. But in the aforementioned cases of where transmission or handbrake were hijacked, this would have caught the error and Installomator would have refused to install something immediately. Installomator can work with disk images, zip archives, and some other archive formats, and PKGs. There are some applications that nest a PKG in a disk image, or in one case, it's actually a PKG in a disk image in a zip. Installomator can usually deal with those too. But that's the basic thing. It is originally it was written to work with Jamf Pro, but from the very beginning we thought we would keep it in a way that it can run on many different MDMs. It's MDM agnostic, There are two ways of running it. You can either just upload the script into your management system, like with Jamf Pro, and run it from there, or you can install the script on the clients and invoke it using a shell command. Depending on your management system, you can use one or the other. But with those two approaches, we can support many, many management systems. These are the ones that I am aware of that people use Installomator with, but I'm pretty certain that whatever your management system is, you can probably make it work. As of now, we have 800 applications, which is, for me, absolutely mind-blowing. When we started out, the first version, the first release version, I think had 60 applications, somewhere on that. And I thought maybe we might get to somewhere 100, maybe 200, and that would be so amazingly awesome. And we're at 800 and still counting. It was built to be really easy extensible. So if you want to add an application, this is pretty much what you need to add. Like, what type is it? How can I get it? How can I get the latest version? And what is the expected team ID? For some apps, that's just 4 lines of code. For others, it's a bit more. But because these are just basically shell script segments, we can do all kinds of weird things if we have to get these pieces of information, and that's what Installomator needs to run. We have tutorials on the wiki in case you're interested in building your own labels or recipes or applications or whatever you call them. So that's how Installomator works. Um, I'm not doing this alone anymore. It started out as my project, but I'm not doing this alone anymore. We have a team of 5 maintainers currently. Aside from me, it's Adam Kodega, Isaac Ordonez, Søren Talgaard, and Travis Sizok just joined us recently and has already been a huge help. All of us use Installomator in our deployments or in our day-to-day consulting work, and all of us are actively contributing to the code. This is certainly not just me anymore. And aside from these 5 people, when you look at the Installomator repository, this is where you find it, github.com, Installomator, Installomator, fairly easy to remember. But when you look at it right now, we are currently at 161 people who have contributed a bit of code. And that, to me, is just mind-boggling. It's really great. So that's wonderful. There are also some presentations online. So if you go on YouTube or their websites where people, the conferences store their presentations, you can find some old presentations, some of them less old. So early in the phase, it was just me, but since 2 years, Søren has been doing a lot of very, very interesting, very practical presentations. Last year at JNUC, Jared Young did one on Installomator. And I know that for this year, conference season is coming up. We will have a lot of great conferences coming up. I know that some other people have put in some really interesting presentations. Another thing that is really cool is there are now tools that use Installomator to do other cool things. We have 2 tools called Patchomator by Charles Mangan and App Auto Patch by Rob J. Schroeder, which will go through a list of applications on your client and check if they need updates. And if they need to, they will update them. They use Installomator as the mechanism, but they put a script around or on top of that to coordinate the other functionality. Travis Sissox has built a tool called Baseline that uses Swift dialog for the display of the progress. It's for a first enrollment or first installation. This Baseline will take scripts and packages and other tools out of a folder, and among other things, it can use Installomator to do the first enrollment installations. It's management system agnostic, so if that's something you need, that's very interesting. Eric Stam, who I mentioned, helped with the initial conception of Installomator, has written another tool called Uninstaller, and it doesn't use Installomator, but it has a very similar format. And yes, it's a script that can uninstall a list of applications. So if you're looking for the opposite of Installomator, check out Eric Stam's uninstaller. All of these projects are on GitHub, so I just left away the github.com, but that's where you find them. There's another tool that we've been building and testing in our consulting engineering team. It's called Setup Manager. It's currently in private beta. If you want to check it out, email me and we can see if we can get you onto the private beta. It's basically a replacement for the ancient dep notify script with a lot more modern features and some nice UI and things like that. And it can also use Installomator for the first enrollment installations. Having a script allows us to do some things that are really cool. So Installomator has Swift dialog integration. And in this case, for self-service, we can actually have download and installation progress bars that mean something. This is Installomator running in the background, sending its download and installation status to Swift dialog, so the user actually gets feedback. We've sped this up a little, but if you have a slower internet connection, this can be really, really helpful. I said some pro tips. You can override all of the variables in Installomator during the runtime. So Installomator has, I think by now, 28 different variables that you can change in the script to change its behavior. Do you want to show the user notification? Do you want the user to be nagged to quit the app, or do you want to just install over the running app? I don't recommend that, but in some cases, it might make sense. And there's 28 other variables that we can use to influence the behavior, like how do you communicate with Swift dialog if you want to. And you can change them in the script, which makes sense for some situations, but I can also just have them as arguments in the command that's run and override those variables using arguments. And this can be used for some really cool things. Like if a download URL, the way Installomator determines the download URL breaks because the vendor has changed the download URL, you don't have to wait for a fix for us to update Installomator. You can just override that in the invocation of Installomator with a new download URL. And sometimes in the Installomator channel in Slack, that will be a recommended solution. You can actually build a completely custom label without modifying the code in Installomator by just providing all of the pieces you need in arguments. So that's the values from arguments functionality. That's described on the wiki and can be really great for testing or for custom labels. If you do that with Jamf Pro, of course, we can add the parameters or arguments here. The first parameter that is provided has to be the app label. So which app am I going to install? And then afterwards, I can override the variables. Keep in mind that the order, except for the first one, has to be the application label. The order in which you override the variables is not set. It can be arbitrary. And if you leave one of these empty, so if you left parameter 6 empty and put something in parameter 7, that would actually choke Installomator and it wouldn't work as you expect. So just fill those in as you need them in any order. Yeah, order doesn't matter. It's an open source project. I have said earlier, we have so many contributors. We have a huge backlog of PRs, pull requests, and issues that we are working through slowly, but we are catching up. But there's ways that you can help even if you're not in the maintainer team. And I wanted to talk about that briefly too. The first one is if you think you found a problem with Installomator, you are probably right. It's not a perfect tool. It's a very dynamic world out there, and download URLs and other things break all the time. So it's very likely that you have identified a problem. It might be your network, it might be the vendor and the download. But before you talk about it and ask questions, maybe search the GitHub first. If somebody has already filed a pull request or an issue, search the Slack. Somebody might have asked that just an hour or two before. Just search before you ask a question. I think that's generally a good tip. Our favorite way of how you can help is to create a pull request. We have made it quite easy to create new labels or to update broken labels, um, and even to provide new features to Installomator if you think you have a great one. Pull requests in Git where you provide the code you created and we can merge it, test it, and then merge it in is our preferred way. But I completely understand pull requests require a quite high level of I know how Git and GitHub works, and that's not for everybody. So you can also just file an issue. Um, pull requests provide the code, and we can merge them. An issue is just a description of, hey, I think this is broken. And if you built the code, but you're not comfortable with Git and GitHub on merging that in as a pull request or providing that as a pull request, just copy paste the code into the issue. We certainly appreciate that too. They might take a bit longer until we um, actually put them in the code, but we eventually will do that too. Even if you're not comfortable with writing code, create an issue. If you've checked first, if nobody else has created that issue, um, then please create an issue and point out that problem. You can also go to the macadmin Slack and say, I've noticed this. Is that something that everybody has, or is it my network? Is it my situation? Am I doing something wrong? Come to the macadmin Slack Installomator channel. People will help you there as well. Very much appreciated. Um, you can also go to the GitHub repository and look at the PRs. And if you find one that you think that fixes your problem, you can grab the code out of that PR, even if it's not in the main Installomator branch yet. You can grab that code and test it on your deployment. You can leave a comment there. If you do that, please leave a comment and let us know, hey, this fixed it for me. If you, during your search, find duplicates, multiple issues or PRs addressing the same problem, you can mark them. Leave a comment and say, this is a duplicate of issue number something or PR number something. That helps us as the maintainers in the triage because we have to do that anyway eventually. And if you already identify that and leave a comment, very much appreciated. Helps our work, speeds up the merging, speeds up the next release. You can write documentation. There is a wiki associated with the repository. We've already put a lot of great things in there. Søren wrote a post on creating pull requests, if you're interested in how to do that. Or Søren wrote many posts on how to build your own labels or recipes. If you want to do that, check on the wiki. But we also know there's a lot of pieces in the wiki that are still missing. If you want to write documentation, only maintainers can update the wiki. I wish GitHub let us do that. But create an issue, paste the text of the of your documentation that you'd like added or updated on the wiki in there, and we will do that eventually. If you have your own blog, write blog posts. I will be happy to feature them in macadmins.news, and we will probably link them from the wiki or somewhere. Or if you want to do a presentation at a local macadmins meeting or at one of the big conferences, awesome, wonderful, go ahead, do that. If you need help from us, the maintenance team, I'm happy to share my slides, and you can use some of them or base your presentation off of those. Most importantly, it is an open source tool. It is published under a license, but you know how it works. We cannot take any responsibility. In the end, it is you who have chosen to run this piece of script that you found out on the web to install things as root on hundreds and thousands of your clients. So on every update, every time you add a new application, it is your job to verify that Installomator is really, really doing what it's supposed to be doing. We do our best to keep bugs and other issues out of Installomator, but it's not perfect. And as I said, many things outside of Installomator that aren't under our control change all the time. So yes, it's a wonderful tool. I'm really happy that people are using it. I recommend using it. But in the end, it's your deck that's out there. And there's nothing I can do about that. So you have to verify it. This is true for every open source project and even some closed source tools. Check it. Be responsible in using it, and then we can all have it going forward and enjoy some great tool. With that, thank you very much.